our cost of living price increase has increased more than London's. In real terms, Manchester is more expensive for a student. The hall's prices at this university have risen 40% above inflation. Students know that it's incredibly trying times for both like themselves as individuals and like everyone, but I feel like people don't really grasp how much they truly are struggling, or their peers are truly struggling, because
in today's episode, we hear from Jayden and Nathan, two Manchester students deeply involved in a student union research project about the cost of living crisis. They're here to share key insights and recommendations from their work and discuss what this all means for you as a student in Manchester. So, Jayden and Nathan,
Hello.
thank you for joining us.
no worries at all. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, just to quickly introduce you guys, could you tell us what you guys study and a bit about your project?
Yeah, so I'm Jayden. I do economics and politics. I'm in my third year, and our project is just analysing cost of living within Manchester, and as within the student population of Manchester, and how it's been increasing. So we're going to look at like factors on both a local, interregional and national level, and we have many different sections such as accommodation, basic needs, activities, and student loans, and university finances, scholarships and awards, and ultimately we would then examine the impact of the cost of living crisis on well-being and mental health, as well as the impact on marginalised communities. And I'll just let Nathan introduce himself now. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Nathan. I do politics. I'm also in third year. I'm kind of interested in kind of how this like topic impacts uni students, but then it's in the wider kind of context of cost of living and kind of more accurately, I'd say, cost of greed crisis at the moment. So particularly with kind of rampant rents, bills going up, that sort of thing, kind of the lack of legislation from the government. Also a lack of hope as well, because the Prime Minister-elect, Keir Starmer, I mean, he himself said that if he was going to uni at the moment, which is like his big thing, is kind of like, social climate is a bit of a harsh word, but he kind of comes from what he says is a working class background to being a barrister and kind of being in the position of power he is today. He said he couldn't afford to go to uni at the moment in the current climate if he was a student, but then has no promises to do with tackling this issue, and kind of not a lot of hope tackling the wider issues as well, as there is not necessarily a left-wing alternative in this country at the moment.
So that sounds like a really time-consuming big project. So I'm curious to hear, what was your motivation to kind of like decide to start it?
So, sorry, we just, we thought that, there wasn't really enough support from the university or the local government or national government concerning the current cost of living crisis for students. There has obviously been some support. Last year, the university did a cost of living payment, and I believe that they have changed their hardship fund to make it a bit more accessible after the work that myself and a couple other people from the student union team, and but mainly the activities and culture officer Robbie did as well. I believe that they've made it a bit easier to access, but also another motivation for why I'm doing this report is because this year I've definitely felt the impact of the cost of living more than any time that I've had at uni so far. I've applied for this hardship fund, so we'll see if I get it. If not, maybe there's something else to write about there. But my situation is not unique. I come from a working class background, but there are plenty of other students, even from like more affluent like upbringings and such, that are still struggling just as much as I am. Maybe more so because their parents might not be able to lend them money, but because they have a lower student loan because their parents earn more, then they can't get as easy access to funding. So there are definitely, it's not just an issue that affects poorer students, it affects the entirety of the student cohort. Almost everyone that I meet, it's like tells me that they can't afford to do this, they can't afford to do that, and like things that were like in our like first year, so in 2021 to 22, even though there was still already cuts to funding at that point because of the policies of the Conservatives, since they've been in power since 2010. Even despite that, in our first year, we were definitely able to do more things and go out more and like do more recreational activities. But this year, almost everyone I talk to, if I want to go to something, or if they want me to go to something, we have to really like look at our bank accounts and like be like, all right, like if I do this is going to cost me this, and then like, am I going to be able to afford rent? Am I going to be able to afford my bills, and things like that? I'm in a really difficult financial position at the moment where I won't be able to afford my bills for the April month, or my rent for the April month. So that is why I've applied for the fund. But yeah, I just think that students are really struggling at the moment, and I don't feel like enough focus is being put onto it, and I don't feel like there's enough support from any of the necessary channels that you can go to for this kind of issue. And because it's so widespread, there needs to be some big scale action that's done to ease the situations for students, because it's having an impact on people's academics, it's having an impact on people's mental health and well-being, and it can harm people's interpersonal relationships as well, because money is a big external stressor for people. So you can't necessarily just ignore this issue and just like I don't know, I'm not saying people have done this, but tell students to just put up with it and just get on with it, because it gets to the point where students are having to decide, all right, do I study to try and get a good grade, or do I work so that I can afford to eat this week or whatever? And yeah, that's kind of my motivation behind it as well. I'm sure Nathan's is similar as well. Sorry, if you wanna talk.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of stuff. I mean, I think with our project we're trying to do a lot of like kind of grassroots thing, like bottom up, a lot of it's like to raise awareness, work with the uni. I mean, sometimes it's a bit difficult because you kind of have to make them take you seriously, but a lot of it is just kind of systematic, about all the problems at the moment. I mean, personally, I'm fairly privileged and like middle class background, but a lot of like disposable incomes at the moment are getting really squeezed, particularly in the middle classes, just because of the rising costs of living generally. So even a couple years ago or pre-pandemic, a lot of people could kind of, their parents could provide a lot easier. So that's what a lot of loans are based on, this kind of idea that parents have more of a disposable income, because they might be on the same income or more even, just as like kind of inflation's gone up, but they have a lot less to be able to give to their kids and stuff. So yeah, I'm taking that perspective a little bit. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your experiences. It's definitely good, like nice to hear that like the university has responded to the initial campaign. And on that note, because I'm sure like there's like students around the country are facing similar issues.
Yeah.
Like how do you go about kind of campaigning something that affects so many people? I was speaking to one of the rent strike like founders, and he mentioned how difficult it is to kind of communicate stuff like this. So
yeah,
how would you go about that?
We're very fortunate that because I did some work with the university with the student union last year, that I still have, we've received a lot of support from the student union concerning this project. We've had setbacks, we've had we've had issues on like starting and things like that, and they've been incredibly supportive in helping us both do this report and distribute our findings as well. So the current plan is that we're gonna have this all finished and finalised within the next couple weeks to like maybe under 2 months, and then from there we'll send the report to the SU. I presume they'll make any changes if that's needed once they've read it, and then after that we will then be in contact with the SU social media team. So from there we'll probably get some like nice fancy like infographics and posts made up to then be easily distributed across social media. So then because I don't know about you, but like I feel like most students get their updates on like what's happening through the uni, not just like by the uni's like email system, but also on like Instagram and stuff like that. And so that's kind of the avenue in which we're going to go through. They originally suggested to us to create our own Instagram page about this, but I think it would be better if we posted it on their social media, because they've already got a big following of like a lot of students in the uni, and you know, they have a whole team to just like help make a lot of the information easy to digest and palatable for like, you know, people's ever decreasing attention spans these days. So so yeah, that's kind of how we're gonna distribute it. At the moment we've got I would say maybe 6 of us, I think. 6 of us all working on this report. We're all in our final year, so it's quite tricky to balance everything alongside our studies and this report and work as well. But we're all making it manage. We're all meeting up when we can. We're working very collaboratively, and we're receiving a lot of support from the student union. And I can't say of what's going to happen after we finish the report and start distribution on social media, but hopefully the end goal is to raise enough awareness of the sort. Even though the cost of living crisis is a situation felt by everyone, students in Manchester are in a sort of unique situation, in my opinion, because we face a lot of the prices that are felt in like southern cities that are usually of higher income, but we still have the same kind of student loan as like other places in the country that are not London.
I'm sure a lot of people also are curious about like so you know the report, who it's aimed at?
Yeah.
Is there like the government? Like,
Yeah.
do you think they should do something about the crisis, or the university itself?
We will write recommendations on like both a university level, a local government level, and a national government level. I'm not gonna lie, like I don't have much hope that the government will read our findings and take them all into account to decide their legislation. We're not the first to have said a lot of these things that we're going to say and things like that, but we are collating them in a way in which it's relevant to the people at universities in Manchester. But maybe we could get some policy changes within the university, maybe even within the local government as well. Which is why, again, we're working with the student union, because it is my understanding that they have a lot of contact with Andy Burnham, and maybe our findings can get passed on to him, and he can maybe do some things on a more like local governmental level. But we will write recommendations for the national government, but you know, like I doubt they would read them. But there's always hope, but even if we do hope,
we're trying to have a bottom up kind of
Yeah.
situation where if there is some awareness and the university takes it on board, I mean, we're gonna see a new government fairly soon. If universities kind of see that the situation is kind of untenable, they will have someone that will, hopefully the new government will listen, because obviously a lot of these issues have been caused by the incumbent Conservative government. They're not going to do anything. If anything, they're just going to make it worse.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, they want to have the country in as bad a position as possible for the Labour government to take over.
Yeah.
So then after the next election cycle, they can blame all the issues on that Labour government that will inevitably come in for 5 years.
And they also want to make the academic system, the higher education system, much more profit and business focused rather than education focused, which is why they're defunding a lot of the humanities support, and why they're really pushing for STEM at the moment. So with this kind of report, like Nathan said, it's a bottom-up kind of approach where if hopefully enough students become aware of the issues that they're facing, as well as either as a result of or because of this report, then the university can then maybe implement some more like support measures for students. Is my understanding that the next chancellor is quite student and education focused. Obviously we will not be around to experience that, unfortunately, but that is good for the next round of students that are going to be entering their third, second, first year. And if the work that we do makes an impact on them and their education, so they won't have to go through what we've had to go through so far, then I guess like that is kind of the aims of the report, to just create awareness of the problems that we're all facing here in Manchester, and then hopefully influence policy on a university, local or national level to then not have this kind of situation happen again, where like students are choosing between like heating or water and stuff like that, or like heating and food. It'd be good to try and avoid that kind of situation. So just trying to get lots of support from wherever we can to hear us out. And that's why it's good that we're working with the student union, because they have a lot of contacts and a lot of ways in which that they can influence policy and things like that. And this student union here is one of the largest student unions in the country, so it's good to have that kind of back-in with this kind of report, so that we can be as effective as possible in our findings, and then also our recommendations can be implemented as well. That's hopefully our aim with this report.
I honestly think what you're doing is absolutely important, and I really like the kind of the way you're going about this, because I mean, as a student, I feel like we don't really know like the data and like the actual like the details.
Yeah.
And having someone kind of put that in a nice neat report for us, so that we can kind of like know what's actually going on, would spark like so much kind of discussion.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing essentially, because there's so much. From what I understand, students know that it's incredibly trying times for both like themselves as individuals and like everyone, but I feel like people don't really grasp how much they truly are struggling, or their peers are truly struggling, because a lot of like culture at university is to not really let people know about that. Like, people do joke about it and people are like, ha ha ha, I'm so broke, but like people are really broke, and you know, it's a kind of situation which has been developing for a very long time, especially in the city. Like before we were even thinking about going to university here, like maybe when we were like very, very, very young. We have a lot of statistics on accommodation, for instance, where I'm pretty sure. Sorry, let me just find it. I might have to correct myself and look this up in a minute, but I'm pretty sure accommodations increased by like 40% in real terms since 2004, which in terms of is that right? 40%?
I think it's about right. Yeah.
40%. Which, sorry, I need to find it. Yeah, it's I found this article. It's in the tab, and it says that sorry, not 40%. The halls prices at this university have risen 40% above inflation. So, effectively, students are paying 40% more for rent than they were in 2004, I think. And 2004, and you know, that's a huge chunk of change. That's a lot of money, and you know, when you have that coupled with inflation increase in the city by 10.5% from 2022 to 23, I'm pretty sure 10.5% compared to London's, which is 9.3%. Yeah, in London they have the additional student loan, right? And here we just have the standard rate. Our cost of living price increase has increased more than London's. Yeah.
More than London's?
More than London's.
They have the reputation for being the pricey city.
They are in nominal terms pricier, but in real terms, Manchester is more expensive for a student. When you take into account the difference in loan, as well as like not the same, but similar accommodation prices, grocery prices, travel prices, it's like Manchester is nearly as expensive as London, but in terms of how much money you actually have as a student here in Manchester versus London, you are poorer here in Manchester than London, which is crazy to think about, right? Because London is renowned, like as a student. I don't know about you guys, but I was always told, don't go to London.
Yeah.
Don't go to London. It's so expensive. You won't be able to have a good time in London, etc., etc. But really, people should have been saying that about here. Don't go to Manchester. Manchester's so expensive. You'll have a really hard time struggling here in Manchester.
Yeah.
And what I will say about the rent increase for halls here, it is I think cheaper than any of the other unis at this in Manchester. Not cheaper in the actual like nominal sense, but the increase in rent has been lower than the increases for other accommodations at other unis. Yeah, it's still 40% above inflation. And I don't know if you guys have seen Oak House, but
I've heard stories.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's I would say it's not worth the amount of money you pay per week to live there. And they increase it as well. And I will say they have started renovating it, but there's only so many like things that you can do for accommodation like that.
It seems a little too late because they're renovating it only to knock it down in the next not even 5 years probably. They're already starting to knock down half of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that was as a result of the rent strikes, because they were kind of trying to make it more value for money essentially. Because you're paying for something that it's pretty much pure profit.
Well, I mean, there's not been any other period in history that's been dubbed the cost of living crisis. Like, I'm pretty sure levels of inequality are higher in Britain today than they were in the French Revolution. Like, you know, when you really think about, people seem to think that because they might have access to certain amenities, like they might have stable access to food, they might have a mobile phone, they might have their Netflix subscription, like the people have been fooled into thinking that they not everyone of course, but like a lot of people have been fooled into thinking that they should just be content with what they have, because there are always people that have it worse than them. But when you actually look into like those who have a lot in this crisis, like those who are like the millionaires and billionaires, they're not, they might argue that they're feeling the pinch, but I doubt that they're, like I said earlier, having to choose between their bills and their food. I doubt that they haven't been able to buy clothes for X amount of years because they've had no money to. I doubt that, well, I don't know, it depends on what clothes they buy. But you know, I doubt that they've had issues paying for their rent or their mortgage or whatever. Yet all of us here, we're just having to just make do. And I'm not saying that students deserve the absolute world and like everyone needs to like bow before students' feet and stuff like that. But you know, a little bit more income support and a bit of an easier time regarding our well-being and mental health would be quite nice to receive.
Also, it's like who's paying for the increases on mortgages for landlords? It's the students a lot of the time. I mean, you had I think it was interest rates go through the roof because of the last Prime Minister. Yeah, and Kwasi Kwarteng, this mess. I mean, gas as well. They're making record profits, and they're basically lying through their teeth, using the Ukraine crisis as a kind of excuse. And a lot of it is where's the money going? It is the transfer of wealth from people to the top. Like, it is as simple as that. It's almost disaster capitalism, because I mean, at the end of the day, the economy doesn't run efficiently or well at all if
we are already in recession.
Yeah, if the people don't have money, who's buying things? Because if a billionaire has another billion, where's it going? It's going offshore. It's going, I mean, the thing he might buy is a new yacht, but like, who's seeing that money? It's not going into the economy. I mean, it's kind of a bit ridiculous. I mean, we've got to that point where people have got to choose the economy like sensible policies.
That's how it's always been in history, though, right? They always do that. They always are like, oh well, I'm sorry, a lot of you are going to have to starve or
but
go
it's a sacrifice
cold.
I'm willing to make.
Yeah.
It's the classic Shrek guy. Like, you guys, you know, some of you may die, but like, I don't mind. I think that's almost weirdly the state of politics in this country right now. Is like,
yeah, I want to piggyback off what Nathan said about gas bills, because you know, British Gas, for instance, last year their profits were 75 million and this year it's 750 million. That's an increase of 10 times. I don't know about you guys, I'm paying more on bills this year, and I like to think I'm using less. Like,
yeah, you're more conscious of it.
Yeah, like I'm telling my housemates, I'm like, oh, turn off the lights, like do this, do that, turn off the switches before you leave, stuff like that. I am on a fixed rate, so it doesn't affect me too much, but you know, again, I'm still paying a lot more than I was paying last year for bills. When it comes to rent, I'm living in arguably a worse house this year and paying I would say a third more of the price than I was paying last year. And yeah, like, I'm not the only one in this situation. I remember when I got my house for this year, I was like, God, like, how am I going to afford this? Like, I'm in such a terrible situation. I'm in such an awful situation. How am I going to get out of this? I thought what I was going through with my rent was unique. No, everyone I know is going through this. Like, everyone virtually, not everyone, but like a vast majority of people I know are going through much higher rent problems. Well, much higher rent this year, much higher bills, and then, like, you know, groceries. Like, we all know that. We all know, like almost everyone in this country knows how bad it is. There has been some slowing in the rate of grocery inflation, but it's still very high. And even though they're not rising as... See, this is another... Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked a little, but this really annoys me about how statistics get reported. Because those who are in control of these kinds of things, like inflation and stuff, they will, like, talk about a decrease in inflation, and both them and the media will present it in a way in which they're like, oh, inflation's gone down, like, prices aren't increasing, they're going down. But, like, we all know that that's not what that means. We all know that they are still increasing, just at a lower rate. But even if, like, these aren't the statistics, but even if inflation was at 14% and then decreases to 12%, you're not going to be like, guys, like, inflation is solved, like, we fixed it, like, prices are still rising at 12%. It's lower than 14, but it's still 12%. And for a student, for instance, when you look into when you have, like, the overall cost of living price increase in Manchester being 10.5%, and you also have, like, monthly inflation rates, such as, like, from September to October 2023, we have monthly inflation rates of 11% on an annual average. Yet you only have maintenance loans increasing by 2.5%. Students are almost effectively, just on that alone, 10.5% poorer. And then you have to take into then account rent, bills, travel, all these different things that you have to pay for as a student. Of course you have to pay for things, but when there are increases in the prices of things that are much larger than the increase in the maintenance loan, it's no surprise that so many people are struggling right now. When they're only going up by 2.5%, yeah, in Manchester, cost of living's rising by 10.5%. Rent is rising, like, I can't even tell you how much it's rising, because all just from my own anecdotal experience and, like, from people I know, it's a lot more than what's being reported, I reckon.
Definitely.
We'll have to research that more to be accurate, but from what I can understand, it's a lot more than what we get told. And that's also another thing as well, is that with this report we're going to try and dispel a lot of the, like, slightly positive propaganda that we get told about things, like what I was saying about inflation, like when they're like, oh, inflation's gone down, like, don't worry about it anymore, when, like, it's still very much here. Or, like, you know, when the government was saying, like, just a few days before it was announced we were in recession, they were like, the economy is doing better than ever. Yeah. And then, like, 3 days later, we're in recession. Well, we have been in recession. It's like, this report aims to, like, dispel a lot of the propaganda that we get told by people who want to actively work against us. Because, let's face it, this current administration just does not like students. Like,
yeah,
putting it nicely, they do not like students at all. Yeah,
it's very obvious. Also, it's kind of they want less students. That they want their kids to still go to school, but, you know, sending a kid to uni compared to sending them to private school is actually cheaper. a lot cheaper. So like there's, especially when you have like schools at like 30 grand a year, especially like in London, they're like,
yeah, for masters,
like they're like, whippity, my kids are going to uni, I can save so much money. Those are the kind of people that are putting policies in place for students. They're thinking that it's actually cheaper to send the kids to uni. Those are the people that are working against almost. And like a lot of the things, so like we're saying, oh, recessions, inflation's going down. If you're not necessarily like educated to a level that you can see through it's gone down from 14 to 12%. A lot of people just see inflation's gone down and will automatically think, oh, prices are going back down. So it's kind of like a little bit, why do they want less people at uni? Why do they want people to be less educated? Why do they want people to be working more rather than studying? And like the degradation of their studies of people already there at the moment.
I think it's because we have a bit of a problem in this country at the moment where there's not enough people going into the trades, into like more vocational kind of jobs, and instead of like increasing support for those kinds of things, or like in Germany, for instance, a lot of people go into vocational kind of jobs because there's like a lot of support for that. Whereas like over here, they more so, instead of like trying to build up vocational kind of work, they're putting down humanities, like studies at university and things like that, whilst like emphasizing STEM. And like, I don't know about you guys, but I would not be able to do a STEM subject at university. That would be, I know economics is technically a STEM, but like it's not. Like we can say that it's not a STEM.
No, it's not.
It's not
there's
a STEM.
no universal, like, I mean, I remember someone mentioned there's no universal like truth per se.
No, and in my opinion, I just think that it likes economics, and those who teach economics like to make it seem like it's much more of a truth and natural science than it actually is. Whereas like a lot more of it is more political, more sociological than like traditional economists might want to let on. The way in which, in my opinion, you should be an economist is you should also be interested in politics. You should also be interested in sociology. You should also be interested in other like social sciences and things like that. Because when, I don't know about you, but like when we're in lectures, does it not annoy you when it must do, like when they talk about like a model or something and they're like, oh, this is assuming ceteris paribus, this is assuming if it all stays the same, and we know that they know that's unrealistic and that's not going to happen, and that they're just showing us the effects of this model and stuff like that. But I feel like there should be like more emphasis both within economics and within social sciences as a whole as to like how the different fields interrelate, because you can predict a lot about the economy by knowing what's going on in politics. You can like by tracking societal shifts in opinion and culture, you can track a lot of like what's going to happen with consumption and things like that. But yeah, economists, they, not all of them of course, but like a lot of what we get taught is more so on a I don't know how to put it. It's more on like a model kind of like basis where it's like everything else is excluded except the thing that we're learning about, which is not actually what the world is like. It's not what the economy is like. It's all interconnected and it's all related, and it would be better if the subject of economics was taught more so from a perspective where where it encourages critical thinking rather than where it encourages critical thinking rather than conformity to what we've been taught. Because again, I don't know about you, but that is kind of my experience, where you are supposed to not really question the two dominant schools of thought, which is like Keynesianism versus neoclassicism.
I actually wanted to ask you something about that.
Yeah.
So feel free to. All right, so thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts. It was an absolutely fruitful discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks,
We're
yeah.
more than happy to come back. Yeah.
So, part of something we're trying to do for every podcast is having each podcast guest prepare a question for the next one without knowing who they are.
Yeah.
Because it brings out some really interesting discussions. So, our last guest, Dr. Matthias Viana, his question was, what do you think as a society we're doing wrong?
Do either of you want to start first?
I think I need some time to think.
Okay, so for me, I think it's like apathy of the of the people about general issues, because I think there's a lot of like, Jane will talk about it, individual thinking and kind of like, I'm going through this, my bills are kind of going through the roof, and like there's no connection with a lot of people and like how that translates to politics. Or I mean, a lot of people when they vote on single issues rather than like thinking about things generally. And I think there's that kind of apathy of people to kind of engage generally. I don't know. Because I think there's a lot of appetite for people to want real change and want an alternative, which we saw, I guess, with Jeremy Corbyn. But yeah, I mean, it's so uninspiring right now, the political system. I mean, we're going to go into an election with two pretty dismal candidates on the ballot.
Identical, except in maybe slight differences in social policy and maybe slight differences in like social welfare. But even that is hopeful. They'll probably still conduct very similar foreign policy, very similar corporate policy, very similar like ways of governance, from what we can tell at the moment. I would say, in my opinion, the biggest issue facing society in Britain at the moment was probably, to piggyback off of the apathy point, maybe like individualism culture, which is not people's own fault. It's not, in my opinion, it's not the fault of individuals. I feel like it is a culture in which it is informed by the top, and both through propaganda and like things that we get taught that are quote unquote natural, or just the way that things are, and but also the things that we get told to strive for. That in of itself creates the apathy that Nathan's talking about, where people don't care about issues until it like affects them. Until you know, I've definitely experienced that in so many instances throughout my time at university, where like I'll talk to someone about an issue and they won't care about it, but then a couple months down the line I'll talk to them about it, and then they're like, oh yeah, no, that's really bad, and I'll be like, oh, like why'd you change your mind on that? And they're like, oh well, I don't know, if I'm talking to them about like rent or bills, they'll be like, oh well, like my rent went up, or oh my bills went up, and like I see how bad it is, or something like that. And yeah, like I feel like that translates into many different aspects of society, and the way in which politics is conducted, media is reported, the economy is ran, and even people's own individual like choices concerning interactions and relations with other people. All of that is informed by an individualistic culture where your own needs are supposed to be put above the needs of the wider collective. And I think a lot of the ills in the world and in Britain would get fixed if we as a society move towards more collectivist kind of culture, where well, like, I'm not saying the Netherlands is perfect, but in the Netherlands they kind of have, I forgot the specific phrase, but they have a phrase which is what they all live by, where it's like you adhere to like not policies, you adhere to like values of like inclusion and looking out for the wider collective and the wider society, rather than just being so focused on yourself and your own goals and aspirations, which of course you should have, but you know, they shouldn't come to the detriment of other people in a negative way. And that is unfortunately what the current society teaches us, is to you know, step on toes if you can to get where you want to get to, rather than creating positive change that helps to uplift everyone's floor. Instead, just focus on your own ceiling, which is I think the wrong way to go about it. Yeah, sorry, a bit of a long explanation there.
No, thank you. And what about you? Do you have any kind of opinion or any idea of what you think is like we as a society are doing?
I think we need to focus more on equality of opportunity. Like, as you guys, the whole point of it is like, obviously we're not saying 100% equality, but like with the cost of living crisis and everything, the base there's not equality of opportunity there here, obviously.
Right.
If one student is thinking about whether heating or eating, so obviously that does not exist. So I think that needs to be given more focus, and that problem has not been solved yet, and there is no perfect there is no social mobility.
Yeah, that's an important
agree.
one. Social mobility.
100% agree.
Once again, it's been really interesting.
No,
talking.
it's been lovely. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.